Good morning, Christopher.
Good evening, Baiba. This is our third episode. It's going to be the last of this year, 2025, as we move into 2026, which will be the year of brandLingual. I'm so convinced of this. And we've started to get some actually great feedback too. We're starting to get some signal in from the marketplace about what it is that we're doing and how practical spending time with brandLingual could be in your own job and your profession. We can be inspired by some of the survey results that we have gotten back over a period of time that helped really birth this whole project. But with that, Bob, I have to say you're looking very festive here just a few days before Christmas with your sweater. It's like I don't know, maybe these are Christmas colors or holiday colors, but yeah, I'm definitely getting the you're giving festive energy even without the white beard.
Yeah. Ho, ho, ho. Yeah, I don't know. Let's go back and let's talk about those survey findings. Like, let's just open our call. We did some investigation. We didn't want to do it publicly, so we sent a very nice invitation to a lot of strategists from different parts of the world to share their thoughts about their learning journey. And what we found out was some sort of, I would say, some common thoughts that popped up, I would say, among practitioners from different parts of the world. And one of them was that a lot of people are looking for the aspect of long-term learning, that people are looking for community aspect after they have finished the program. And I think that this is something that we have worked on, talked a lot between two of us, that this is something also that we in the end have placed, I would say, at the center or at the heart of brandLingual, which is basically the ongoing learning process after you finish the program or 3 programs, however you want to, how many programs you choose to kind of, finish. And then you have a community around you who are still there to kind of give you a feedback and kind of guide you to be a better practitioner and be a better talker in these talker or language user between these two very distinctive schools of thought. And I think the other aspect that people were mentioning in context of community was that, of course, they want to be together with the people in the room who have went the path a little bit longer, so they could kind of, hear from the real stories, the real practical applications, how to manage different situations.
No, very much so. It's almost like a safety in numbers vibe that all of a sudden, when you're in a cohort and you're learning, there can be this sense of a kind of a collegial, like we're all getting this together, we're all hearing each other's questions and answers, we're all experiencing each other's maybe vulnerability and the extent to which we know or don't know things. And that's something that happens over time. I mean, the first or second class, you're just trying to seek acceptance from one another. You're probably trying to sound smarter or look smarter than you actually, are. But once you get into the third interaction and the fourth and the fifth and beyond, it becomes very clear that it's okay to exhale and start to admit what you know and what you don't know. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to talk about how you're actually practicing with it and admitting that there are speed bumps that you might be hitting, or you put yourself in a situation with a client or a fellow team member or a colleague where you are hearing them wanting to go in a direction that you have recently started to learn might actually be counter growth or the opposite what you need to be doing. And so then what do you do in that moment? How do you steer them back? How do you open them up to a different way to think about it, or admitting that you're falling back onto maybe what you might admit are some bad habits, and to be able to talk about that. And so it becomes like a support group. And I think that's one of the things in many of the programs that I have taken, I think they miss that opportunity on the back end. There's a wonderful vibe when you're with people in person, and all the spontaneous conversations that can happen. But for a lot of online learning, let's face it, a lot of learning going on nowadays is happening online. Unless you are setting your intention to stay connected and get back and have conversations with those individuals, they're gone. And everybody's back in their day-to-day, back in their little bubbles. And you don't feel like you've got the camaraderie, the collegial opportunity to go back and reconnect. And so baked into the heart of brandLingual is to continue that and really to lead with that and provide that brave space and safe space for people to talk and continue to learn together. It gives them that confidence under pressure. I think that is one of the core things that you can get out of this program. Not just more frameworks. Frameworks can be helpful, but I think the strongest pull that we picked up from the survey was, don't just teach me another model, but help me explain why this is the right move. Teach me how to teach this within my own organization, because they're looking for ways to defend decisions with evidence without perhaps sounding overly preachy or overly dogmatic or academic or maybe disconnected from creativity. And that is, I think, sometimes the misunderstanding that people have when they get into evidence-based marketing and understanding marketing science, that somehow it's dismissing creativity, and it's simply reassigning creativity in a way that helps it become more useful. I mean, we shouldn't be creative with the plumbing. Like, we need to understand the fundamentals. And once we understand that, that buys us time to be creative on the top, making things really, really distinctive, using emotion as a means to really encode memory and to help our brands be more memorable. And so it's not de-skilling you creatively, it's re-skilling you as to how to use those creative muscles in more impactful ways.
But I think that a big problem in our industry is that we are lacking these safe spaces. Like, basically what we have is we have LinkedIn where we are swarming around, but we know that we need to sell ourselves. We need to be confident. We need to show that we are the best version of who we are. And there isn't like this opportunity to kind of ask these vulnerable questions like, hey, can you help me understand this? Or can you help me to, I don't know, figure out how I could, I don't know, convince my client to better understand how to use evidence-based these laws. And there are some groups, like some Slack groups where people are swarming around, or there are some WhatsApp groups where people are still swarming around. But I think that these groups are more orientated for tools and some sort of practical ways how to do things, just in some sort of like a quick get-go, like how to quickly kind of use some sort of like, I don't know, framework, or how to quickly understand some sort of things. But there isn't this kind of like a deeper kind of like a context to these spaces, how to, think in some sort of like a frame, like, because these two schools of thought kind of gives you a frame. You're not kind of just floating around and kind of like trying to figure out what are the latest trends or some sort of good vibes, but you are more kind of focusing how I should need to translate one way of thinking into another. And that's where our brandLingual platform comes in as a solution to this, let's say, gap in our industry, or some sort of like a unexplored place in our industry, where we want to give this safe space where you could openly ask vulnerable questions. You can be vulnerable. And honestly, we both with Christopher have basically kind of agreed with each other that we will share a lot of stuff, not only in the live sessions, but also in a written format, in tinkering pieces or thought pieces, to explain what is our experience, how we have managed to get past difficult situations, or how we have managed to kind of get through difficult moments. And I think this could really help you as a practitioner to understand how you could apply practically these things in your daily work.
Yeah, practical tools beat inspiration every time. I mean, exercises, decision rules, examples of how something actually changed a plan or a conversation landed maybe far harder than just big ideas alone. I mean, I believe learners, they want things that they can reuse and reuse again, and maybe over time kind of make their own because they're working so well for them. And then they can teach those to others around them, which then kind of builds their own community within their community and adapt inside what could feel like really messy organizations. So, fluency to them, I think, means repeatability. That's certainly what it means to me. And repeatability is one of the most important things in our industry, because we are in the commercial arts. And commercial is a super important word because it's about reproducibility. It's about doing it again and again and again and again. And that's a core part of it. Absolutely. So if at times this can sound too heavenly for earthly good, or too deep to be appropriate at ground level, at sea level. No, this is all in the end going to be about practicality. But it takes this common understanding and this common fluency in language that helps push you in this direction. And that's one of the most exciting pieces. And it was the big part of feedback that we got back in the survey, is like, that's what people were looking for based on all the other different programs. And imagine any core program that you can think of out there in the world. We talked to people who in some cases took most of them. And this is one of the key things that they're looking for.
Yes, there was almost like at the center, there was this two-side problem, like a problem from two sides. Like on one side, it came out that clients kind of they don't see some sort of like a value in strategy. They don't want to pay about strategist hours. And on the other side, there are strategists who are lacking some sort of understanding about how these fundamental principles actually work. And in between, there's like a huge, some sort of disbalance or problem where brandLingual comes in and wants to kind of give solution and bridge the gap between these two sides by not only inviting in the room, in our training room, practitioners who are working as a strategist or freelance consultants or strategists on the agency side, but also practitioners as marketers. Because this was something that I had a conversation with Christopher, I think yesterday, that we were talking about what is the audience at the end of the day. And Christopher said, like, Baiba, it's practitioners, and it doesn't matter like practitioners on which side, because we all are practicing the same thing to get better results for the brand.
Yeah, and I think just that admission that in fact that we're all trying to practice the same thing is news to some people, because I think some people like to kind of sub-silo themselves into, no, I'm just the copywriter, I'm just the designer, I'm just the person who plans and buys the media. No, I'm just the person who comes up with, and we push ourselves into all of these little niches, obsessed with some particular craft within a craft. And we don't see how we're all trying to accomplish something together. And, that inability to come together and to find some kind of common way in which to work and talk and speak and expect commercial outcomes. I mean, that is the job. How often do teams come together, all assuming that they all share in how they believe and understand how advertising works, as to what a brand is, as to what needs to be moved in the market to actually accomplish the KPIs or commercial outcomes that their client is going to be bonused on and incentivized against, right? And if you want to ever understand someone's behavior, understand the incentive system. Yet none of that's ever discussed. When you start with a particular project, and we all assume that we know these things together, and we have to find a way to come together and have those conversations. And so we're going to be very much encouraging perhaps some uncomfortable conversations among people, and then ways to try and make those questions more comfortable when you bring them back to wherever you're bringing them back to as a practitioner. And I don't care where you're bringing them back to. I don't think we care, as long as you're just practicing, trying to help a brand grow, then in fact, you are the practitioner that we are speaking to.
I think that we need to also bring in the topic and explain to our listeners and potential our community's members that we have thought about for some time how to bring in also real world experience, not through the everybody's known brands, like the big ones that are always put in case studies like Nike or, I don't know, McDonald's or Starbucks or Patagonia, but that we need to kind of create some sort of more like a pattern brands, I would say, the key pattern brands, 3 of them. And I think Christopher can explain a little bit more about this concept, because I think it's super unique and it's not something that others, again, are doing.
One of the unfortunate, I'd say, indictments that is sometimes made by a learner when they're confronted with something that misaligns with, their orthodoxy of how they've been brought up is, oh, well, this doesn't apply to my brand. They're only talking about giant FMCG brands. They're only talking about Coca-Cola. They're only talking about whomever. They're only talking about a brand on another continent, in another city, in another region. And I feel as if it's a coping strategy to deal with, I don't want to accept this information because it's too confronting to what I already know. But yet, meanwhile, the institution, the organization, the educator, to make more globally relevant the content, was deliberately selecting brands that most people would know to accomplish the reach necessary to be as relevant as possible to all the people that they're talking to. And so it's not that the laws of brand growth only apply to giant CPG companies. It just so happens the examples that they're using are examples they're using that most people will know about them. And so they get stuck in that. And then if they want to talk about a small brand or a medium-sized brand, it's too easy for someone to say, like, okay, well, I've never heard of that brand, so it can't apply to me. And so this eternal uniqueness, it's like a disease that I think that practitioners use as a means to reject confronting outside what they believe to be counterfactual information. It's like, I don't want this to apply to me because it forces me to change too much of how I think and work, and now I'm uncomfortable because somehow I think I know it all, and I don't want to change, what I'm doing. So what we decided to do is to try and get around all of that, is that we would pick a very familiar industry that most everyone will be familiar with. So we've picked what we're lovingly calling the coffee wars. And in the coffee wars, it's a simulation. It's a strategy simulation built to make evidence-based marketing feel real, hopefully less theoretical, although you can't get past the theory. The theory is the most important piece of all of this, but then how to apply it. And so we've picked 3 mythical brands that we have modeled against the kinds of brands that you would probably have in any region of the world that is trying to sell coffee. What's also interesting about the coffee category is it exists both across retail and CPG, in that you can have retail cafes that are trying to help build more purchase availability, for the brand. But you can also have ready-to-drink options that could also increase purchase availability for the brands, as being able to go off-site of retail premise cafes, et cetera, and going into convenience stores and grocery stores and vending machines around the world. And so it has both a CPG and a retail component on top of it. Instead of only ever talking about the big brand, or only fetishizing over the sexy small brand, we've decided to present 3 brands: a small, a medium, and a large brand, with the core focus of this brand stuck in the middle as the one that we believe that our learners and our community are going to most associate with. And so those 3 brands are modeled after, we've got the big bear brand, right? That just seems to have this voracious appetite and is constantly gobbling up more and more new and infrequent light users, and thus has become the big brand that we're affectionately referring to as Polar Bean. And Polar Bean is the big brand that has quietly learned over time the laws of brand growth and has applied them against not just their advertising, but across all 4 Ps that help them push and pull the strongest levers that they have out in the category, which are those levers that are way more than just a clever little rectangle or an ad. But Polar Bean continues to grow, is the biggest brand, and in many ways is going to be the pace car simulation brand across all 3 courses. And then you've got the hot little sexy niche independent brand that gets way more buzz on LinkedIn than it ever actually does in the real world. And that brand is called Night Shift. And with Night Shift, they've got this amazing founder story. They've got a really badass logo. They've got these really strong rules about how they behave. They've got maybe 1 or 2 cafes. They would never go ready to drink because that is so passé. The last thing they'd want to ever have is to have their brand, at a Tesco or at a Tom Thumb or out in the world at, some kind of major retailer, because growth to them, they don't need to grow, right? And so they're the sexy brand, and they got a lot of noise around them, and a lot of people want to kind of be like that brand, which might actually keep them small and perhaps even shrink over time and not necessarily very resilient. So they will also be used as a pace car. But in the end, the brand that we feel that everyone is going to be relating to is this brand that constantly seems to be kind of orbiting around average, orbiting around potential mediocrity. It wants to be the big brand, somehow feels like it can't. The big brand is constantly having them under some kind of, it's punishing them twice by having more customers that are slightly more loyal. but then they're often distracted by what night shifts got going on, and people and clients inside of the brand are constantly kind of looking between the two and not focusing on its own assets that it has. And so that brand is Orbit Coffee. And so Orbit Coffee is the brand stuck in the middle. And this is the brand that we believe that people are going to most associate with, and the brand that we're going to work heavily on to help graduate that brand with the laws of brand growth to help them kind of step up and expand out into the world. So essentially, our learners will almost kind of be like players stepping into this crowded coffee category and running one of really helping run the middle brand as a means to compete against those two other brands. It's possible that a learner could associate with the large brand or the small brand, in which case, you could feel as if you have a chance to run one of kind of three competing brand scenarios. But each will have different strengths, different weaknesses, different growth constraints. And thus, then over multiple sessions and exercises and rounds, we'll encourage people to make these, kind of imperfect decisions, maybe about reach, about what their assets are, about their pricing, about their distribution and messaging, while the market perhaps pushes back with what seems like very nonlinear results. Maybe no personas, maybe no fake loyalty curves, maybe just availability, memory, and probability doing their quiet work is what we need to model against something like Polar Bean. And the point isn't to win by just being the most clever. It's then to feel how brands actually grow, and small advantages perhaps compound over time. They're not evident in the beginning. Big bets take time, and most performance differences actually come from it simply being easier to mind and easier to find, and in the end, thus easier to buy, not from just saying something brilliant once from the founder and just repeating that quote infinitely. So hopefully our learners will usually discover what feels right in the room often fails at scale, while what feels perhaps more consistent or more kind of uncommon sense just seems to kind of keep winning. So yeah, Coffee Wars is our simulation to invite people in, to sort of our fantasy case world. It'll seem familiar, but it'll seem different, and allow us to look at three scales of brands without it making it too easy for people to fall back on a coping strategy and say, oh, that's not my brand. I can't find myself in that situation.
Yeah, and if you are interested to kind of be part of this and kind of understand how to do marketing strategy, brand strategy, or creative strategy for each or for one of these brands, you should need to check brandlingual.co. And in the end, we don't have .com, we have .co, because we have, as I said earlier, huge emphasis or huge focus placed on community aspect. That's why we thought that we need to also create our ending of our website, this kind of like address as .co, not .com. So, but this, Christopher, is also our last episode this year. So I think we have done a lot of drum rolls for our listeners and our friends. Yeah, also I would say strategy friends who are also, supporting us, that what is our plan for the 2026. But I think we also have something that we could say that you could put it in your wish list for the 2026.
Yeah, you now have an entire year to plan that this time next year in your LinkedIn. You can say one of the proud accomplishments that you've had in 2026 is that you joined our brandLingual community at brandlingual.co, as well as perhaps even took one of our courses that begin in mid-January with the marketing strategy course. And then looking into 2026, we're excited about lots of different things. I mean, we're going to start to bring on guests that we're going to interview about their own unlearning journey and what it feels like for them to be stuck in this messy middle, practicing between the intuitive and evidence-based schools of marketing. Perhaps some people that have never actually been involved in a podcast environment that have played very important roles in this overall arc, maybe over the last half century even. That being said, if there are other people that you would love to better understand what their journey is, there are other practitioners or voices on LinkedIn or in your own community, let us know who those are. Drop those in the comments or find different ways for us to learn about them. We would love to reach out and to kind of build our community with more people who are stuck, in this sort of a messy middle, and what they're doing, to succeed and learn more. And perhaps even you, if you join one of our courses, perhaps you will be a co-learner that we invite onto this podcast and talk about your experience and bring some of the inside out voices happening in the community, more external out into the world, so they can learn more about you and the things that you're picking up in those courses as well. So if you'd like to join this podcast, perhaps one of the best ways to do that is to join the community and to join our courses. So much is going to be going on in 2026 for brandLingual. We want our brand to grow, and we realize, like every other brand, we are also going to be understanding the laws of brand growth and how they apply to us, and be talking very openly about some of the mistakes that we're making and how we're working around them, because I can guarantee you we've already made some very clear mistakes that are super evident to us, and we're not in denial about them. And that's the kind of information that we want to share. But there are maps for these territories, so we know how to work around and how to push forward to a more growth, like scenario. And so look for us to talk more about those things. So with this, Baiba, I wish you a wonderful holiday as well as a very good evening.
I'm wishing you a successful next year, and also I'm wishing to brandLingual a very exciting and very, I think that next year will be even more challenging, but I think in a good way. There will be a lot of unlearnings for brandLingual team to go through. So have a nice day, Christopher, and let's speak in 2026.